This incredible story took place in the untamed wilderness of Botswana, Africa, where the golden savanna extended endlessly beneath a brilliant blue sky. Daniel and his trusted companion Michael, both passionate conservationists, were navigating the vast terrain in their sturdy off-road vehicle. The steady drone of the engine served as a constant soundtrack while they surveyed the area, their sharp eyes attuned to detect any irregularities. Though it was a mission they had carried out many times before, that particular day was destined to be far from ordinary. As they navigated the uneven terrain, a faint but peculiar sound pierced the stillness of the afternoon. It was a low, mournful moaning, drifting from the direction of the tall, golden grass swaying gently in the breeze. Michael furrowed his. "Did you hear that?" he asked, leaning forward. Daniel, gripping the wheel, nodded. "I did. Let us check it out." They brought the vehicle to a stop, the silence of the savanna now more pronounced. Leaving the engine off, the two men stepped out, the crunch of dry grass beneath their boots the only sound accompanying them. "Could be an antelope," Michael suggested, his tone cautious but curious. Daniel tilted his head, listening. "Maybe, but let us not assume." Carefully, they moved toward the source of the noise, their senses on high alert. They knew well that danger often lurked in the dense bushes, where predators could hide unseen. Still, their curiosity outweighed their caution. As they pushed aside the tall grass, their breath caught in their throats. The sight that greeted them was heart-wrenching. Lying amidst the undergrowth were 3 lion cubs. At first glance, the tiny creatures appeared peaceful, their golden coats blending with the dry grass. However, a closer look revealed the harsh truth. 2 of the cubs were lifeless, their fragile bodies still and cold. Only one cub was still alive, its trembling body pressed against its lifeless siblings. It gazed up at Daniel with wide, tear-filled eyes, its tiny frame weak and filled. With fear, Michael instinctively stepped back. "Daniel," he whispered urgently, "if the mother is nearby—" "I know," Daniel interrupted, his voice low but firm. His eyes remained fixed on the surviving cub, his heart breaking for the helpless creature. Something about its gaze, so desperate and full of trust, pulled him closer, despite the risks. Slowly, he knelt, his movements deliberate. The cub did not flee but stared at him with a mix of fear and hope. "It is okay, little one," Daniel murmured, his voice soft. "I will not hurt you." Michael watched nervously from a few paces away. "Daniel, this is crazy. If the mother is around, we are dead." Daniel did not respond immediately. His instincts, honed from years of working with wildlife, told him something was wrong. The cub should not have been alone for this long. If the mother had been nearby, she would have already returned. He glanced around, scanning the surroundings for any sign of her. The silence was unsettling. Michael shifted uneasily. "What do you think happened?" Daniel exhaled, his jaw tightening. "Poachers." Michael's face darkened. It was a grim reality they had encountered before. Lion populations were dwindling due to illegal hunting and habitat destruction. The mother had likely been killed, leaving her cubs to fend for themselves. The tiny cub let out a weak whimper, nudging its unmoving siblings as if trying to wake them. Daniel's heart ached. He knew that without intervention, this cub would not survive the night. He reached into his pack, pulling out a small blanket. "We cannot leave it here," he said, determination in his voice. Michael hesitated, glancing between the cub and the open savanna. "Are you sure about this?" Daniel nodded. "It has nobody else. We are its only chance." With careful hands, he wrapped the cub in the blanket and lifted it into his arms. The tiny creature shivered but did not resist. It nestled against Daniel's chest, its breathing slow and labored. As they turned back toward their vehicle, Michael exhaled sharply. "I hope you know what you are doing." Daniel glanced down at the fragile cub in his arms. "So do I." With that, they climbed into the truck and set off toward the nearest wildlife sanctuary, carrying with them the fragile hope of a new beginning for the orphaned lion cub. Daniel shook his head, his focus unshaken. "She is not here, Michael. If she were, we would have seen her by now." He reached out gently, letting the cub sniff his hand. To his relief, the tiny lion did not retreat. Instead, it crept closer, its exhaustion evident in every step. "What do we do?" Michael asked, his tone resigned. Daniel let out a deep sigh, his heart weighed down with emotion. "We cannot just leave it here. It does not stand a chance," he said firmly. His eyes lingered on the lifeless cubs, a wave of sorrow engulfing him. "We owe it to them to at least try and save this one." Michael paused for a moment, then gave a reluctant nod. "All right," he agreed, "but let's move fast." Together they dug a small grave for the fallen cubs, their movement solemn. As they worked, Daniel felt a deep resolve settle within him. He would not let this cub's story end in tragedy. Gently, Daniel picked up the surviving lion, its frail body barely heavier than a house cat's. "I am calling you Stella," he whispered, "because you are the glimmer of hope in all this sadness." The journey back to their camp was tense. Stella lay curled in Daniel's lap, its small frame trembling. Back home, Daniel immediately offered it a can of sardines, but Stella turned its head away, too weak or frightened to eat. Concern etched across his face. Daniel called the local veterinarian. "I have a lion cub," he explained urgently. "It is starving and weak. I need help." The vet's tone was filled with urgency. "Bring her in right away." Daniel did not think twice. With Michael behind the wheel, they raced to the clinic, Stella held gently but firmly in Daniel's arms. The cub's shallow breaths served as a heartbreaking reminder of how close she was to the brink. "Hang on, Stella," Daniel whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We are almost there." At the clinic, the veterinary team sprang into action. Stella was placed on a table, its tiny body surrounded by tubes and monitors. The vet, a woman with a kind but no-nonsense demeanor, glanced at Daniel. "The odds are not great," she said, "but we will do everything we can." As the team worked tirelessly, Daniel paced the room, guilt and anger swirling within him. He wondered how such a cruel fate had befallen these innocent creatures. But he also knew one thing for certain: he would not let Stella's story end in tragedy. He would fight for her, just as she had fought to survive. And in that moment he vowed that no matter what it took, he would give her the chance to live. Poaching was rampant in the area, and it was likely the cub's mother had been killed for her hide or teeth, a grim reality Daniel had seen too many times before. Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is not your fault," he said quietly. Daniel nodded, though the weight of responsibility still bore down on him. "I just hope it is not too late for Stella." Hours passed before the vet emerged from the back room. She looked tired but hopeful. "Stella is stable for the moment," she said. "It is going to be a challenging journey, but there is hope." A wave of relief swept over Daniel as he exhaled a breath he had not noticed he was holding. He moved closer to Stella, now lying comfortably beneath a cozy blanket. The cub's eyes flickered open, and for the first time, a faint spark of trust and recognition appeared. "You are safe now," Daniel whispered, "and I promise you will never be alone again." Thanks to the tireless efforts of Daniel, Michael, and the veterinarians, Stella managed to survive the critical period. After 2 days of intensive care, the vets declared the lion cub stable enough to leave. "She is out of the woods," the lead veterinarian said with a reassuring smile. "But she will still need plenty of care and attention." Daniel thanked them profusely before gently lifting Stella into the passenger seat of his off-road vehicle. "All right, little one," he said softly, stroking her head. "Time to go home." The drive back was silent, with Stella curled up on the seat, her small, fragile body a reminder of her struggles. Daniel found himself glancing at her every few minutes, his heart heavy with the weight of all she had been through. "You are safe now," he whispered softly, as if trying to comfort both her and himself. When they arrived home, the cub was visibly apprehensive. She stayed close to Daniel, her wide eyes darting around at every noise. Even the sound of a door creaking caused her to flinch. Daniel crouched beside her, speaking in gentle tones. "It is okay, Stella. No one will hurt you here." Despite his calming presence, he could not help but feel a pang of sorrow. What had she witnessed in those crucial early weeks of her life to leave her so fearful? The days turned into weeks, and slowly but surely, Stella began to adjust. At first, she would only eat when Daniel was nearby, her sharp gaze fixed on him as if ensuring her safety. Daniel worked tirelessly to provide her with the nutrition and care she needed. Sardines gave way to fresh meat, and her bony frame began to fill out. "Look at you," Daniel said one day, smiling as he watched Stella pounce playfully on a ball he had given her. "You are getting stronger." As Stella regained her health, she began to show glimpses of her playful nature. Daniel introduced her to small games like chasing a stick tied to a string or balancing on a makeshift log he had placed in the yard. "You have got to learn to use those instincts," he would say, watching her crouch low before springing into a perfect pounce. Stella appeared to truly enjoy these moments, and her trust in Daniel grew stronger with each new day. The connection between them became inseparable. Stella followed Daniel wherever he went, frequently laying her head on his lap while he focused on his conservation work. "You are more than just a lion. You are family," Daniel said one evening, gently scratching behind her ears as she emitted a soft purring sound, something most would never associate with an animal like her. But Daniel always knew this arrangement could not last forever. Stella was growing rapidly, and the once small cub was now a strong, imposing lioness. Her presence, though beloved by Daniel, began to raise concerns among the local villagers. Rumors spread, and people became uneasy. "A lion, even one raised by a human, is still a wild animal," a neighbor warned. Daniel understood their fears, but the thought of parting with Stella filled him with dread. To make matters worse, his time in Botswana was coming to an end. His work contract was nearing completion, and he would soon have to return to Germany. "What am I supposed to do, Stella?" Daniel murmured one evening, sitting beside the lioness as she gently nuzzled his arm. "I cannot bring you with me, and I cannot leave you here on your own." After long and difficult consideration, Daniel made the heart-wrenching choice to take Stella to a nearby wildlife sanctuary. The sanctuary was highly regarded, committed to rehabilitating and caring for animals just like her. On the day of their departure, Daniel packed her things, a few toys she loved, a blanket she often slept on, and loaded her into the vehicle. The ride to the sanctuary was quiet, both of them sensing the weight of the moment. When they arrived, Daniel met with the staff, who assured him they would do everything possible to make Stella feel at home. But as he said his final goodbye, the tears he had tried to hold back began to fall. "I love you, Stella," he whispered, stroking her head one last time. "Be brave, okay?" Stella's usually bright eyes seemed clouded with sadness, and as Daniel walked away, she let out a mournful sound that tore at his heart. Life without Stella was harder than Daniel had anticipated. Though he threw himself into his work, he often found his thoughts drifting to her. He called the sanctuary regularly for updates, but the news was rarely encouraging. "She is struggling to settle in," a staff member confessed. "We are doing all we can, but she just seems lost." A year went by, yet Stella's condition barely improved. Daniel could not shake the feeling that he had let her down. Then, one day, a phone call came through that completely broke his resolve. "Stella's health is declining," the sanctuary director said. "She has stopped eating. We are worried she might not make it." Without hesitation, Daniel booked a flight to Botswana. He arrived at the sanctuary the following day, exhaustion etched into his face but determination burning in his eyes. When he told the staff he wanted to see Stella, they hesitated. "She is not the same cub you raised," one of the handlers cautioned. "She is a full-grown lion now. It could be dangerous." "I do not care," Daniel said resolutely. "I need to see her." Inside Stella's enclosure, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The staff looked on nervously as Daniel moved toward the lioness, who lay motionless in the corner, her massive body appearing lifeless. "Stella," he called softly, his voice trembling. The lioness lifted her head, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, there was silence. Then, as if a dam had broken, Stella rose to her feet. She walked toward him slowly at first, her movements deliberate. The staff held their breath, unsure of what would happen. But as Daniel stepped closer, calling her name gently, something remarkable occurred. Stella's ears perked up, and her head snapped toward the source of the familiar voice. For a moment, she did not move, as though trying to process what she was seeing. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, she rose to her feet and ran toward the fence, her powerful strides shaking the ground. Gasps rippled through the onlookers, many of whom instinctively took a step back. But Daniel stood his ground, a smile breaking across his face as he saw the recognition flicker in Stella's eyes. "Hey there, girl," Daniel said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "It is me." Stella reached the fence, pressing her enormous paws against the steel bars as she let out a deep, rumbling sound. Neither a roar nor a growl, but something in between. It was a sound of longing, a plea for connection. Daniel did not hesitate. He unlocked the gate and stepped inside, despite the audible protests of the staff behind him. "Be careful," someone shouted. But it was too late. Daniel was already inside the enclosure. Time appeared to stretch as Stella moved toward him. The staff stood frozen, their anxiety almost tangible. The lioness stopped a short distance away, her golden eyes fixed intently on his. Then, without warning, she sprang forward. A collective gasp escaped the crowd, but instead of attacking, Stella wrapped her powerful paws around Daniel in an embrace, pressing her massive head against his chest. She let out a series of joyful purrs, licking his face and nuzzling him, as though trying to make up for all the lost time. A cheer erupted from the onlookers, the tension melting away into awe and relief. Daniel laughed, his own tears streaming down his face as he held the lioness tightly. "I missed you too, Stella," he whispered. "I missed you so much." From that moment on, Daniel's visits became a regular occurrence. Each time he arrived, Stella would run to greet him, her behavior a testament to the unbreakable bond they shared. Daniel spent hours with her, helping her adapt to her new surroundings. He encouraged her to explore the enclosure, introduced her to the other lions, and even observed her tentative attempts to join their hunts. Progress was gradual, but it was undeniable. "Look at her," one of the keepers observed during one of Daniel's visits. "She is like a completely different lion when you were here. Happier, more self-assured." Daniel nodded, his gaze fixed on Stella. "She just needed someone to believe in her," he said softly. "Do we not all?" Over time, Stella's transformation was undeniable. She began to form bonds with the other lions, learning to socialize and even play. Her hunting skills improved, and she started to rely less on human assistance. Yet every time Daniel visited, she would revert to her affectionate, playful self, running to greet him with the same enthusiasm as their first reunion. For Daniel, these visits were a balm for his soul. Though he had returned to his life in Germany, he made it a priority to visit Botswana as often as possible. Each trip strengthened their connection and brought him immense joy. "You will always be a part of my life, Stella," he told her one day, stroking her mane as she purred contentedly. "No matter where I go, you are my family." Stella's story became an inspiration not just for Daniel, but for everyone at the sanctuary. Visitors marveled at the bond between man and lion, a relationship built on trust, love, and perseverance. The staff often shared the tale with guests, emphasizing the importance of treating animals with kindness and understanding. Today, Stella is thriving in the sanctuary, fully integrated into the lion pride. She has embraced her natural instincts, becoming a strong and capable lioness. Still, her connection with Daniel remains as unshakable as ever. Every time he visits, they share moments of genuine happiness, as if not a single day has gone by. At the heart of this remarkable story is a message of hope and compassion. It reminds us that even in the face of great challenges, love and determination can bridge the gap between species.